spine-chilling tales of sinister park rangers, 10 missing persons exposed in haunted forest realms. Sarah's heart raced as they approached the eerie Pine Hollow forest. Whispered rumors of 10 missing persons sent shivers down her spine. Tales spun into nightmares that lingered like the fog curling low through the trees. Everyone back in the dusty suburbs warned her, but today was meant to be different. She was determined to offer her 8-year-old son Lucas a day of adventure and freedom from their cramped apartment. But even the shy sun overhead felt like a distant, untrustworthy ally, barely peeking through the heavy clouds. "Mum, look!" Lucas squealed, darting ahead, oblivious to the ominous rusted sign warning about the friendly rangers. Her laughter faltered, and an unsettling chill gripped her stomach. The locals painted their own fears into words, insisting the rangers had motives hidden in shadows. Ignoring goosebumps prickling her skin, Sarah focused on capturing images for her blog, hoping to mask any lurking danger behind a facade of happiness. As deep greens and browns swallowed them whole, Lucas's laughter echoed between the towering trees, sounding almost too innocent in the thickening air. Yet Sarah couldn't shake the whispers curling around them like smoke. The laughter transformed into sinister murmurs at the edge of her consciousness. Shaking her head, she trained her phone's camera on Lucas, capturing his blissful expressions, intent on shutting out the rising tension. But then, there they were, lost items scattered like a grim breadcrumb trail. A child's shoe kicked aside, a blood-stained bandana darting in the cool breeze. Panic prickled at her throat, but fear was buried beneath the urgency to keep Lucas safe and the need to document their outing. Just as dusk began to sidle in, Sarah aimed for the perfect sunset shot, only to hear a rustle behind them. Her heart stuttered, and she turned, knuckles whitening around her phone. But nothing revealed itself. That evening, they set up a small campfire among anxious shadows creeping closer. Lucas's bright eyes dimmed with uncertainty, his small body instinctively edging toward her side. "Mom, I don't like it here," he whispered, and Sarah noticed the tingle of dread electrifying her spine. Could her need for adventure overlook sinking fears? Suddenly a noise crackled through the underbrush, and Sarah's heart slammed against her ribs. The world around her sharpened at that moment. Lucas was gone, just like that, melted into the very air. Panic surged through her as she called out, voice breaking, "Lucas, where are you?" The shadows thickened as they stretched into horrific shapes, her frantic cries swallowed by the quiet, creeping terror. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Panic clawed at her throat as she was whisked into formation with her frantic neighbors, her heart racing. The rangers hovered like ominous figures at the edge of the search party, their calm smiles twisting into something wicked. Each reassuring phrase felt coated in deception. As the rain began to patter, an imposing darkness settled in, tightening its grip around her thoughts. Pine Hollow wasn't just a park, it was a haunting, steeped in folklore and ritual that none dared to uncover. Sarah's blood ran cold as she pieced together the truth. This forest wasn't just a sanctuary, but a graveyard of missed cries. She steeled herself, prepared to confront the rangers lurking in the shadows of her worst fears. Her breath quickened, and with each heartbeat, the chilling truth loomed closer, echoing an unsettling question. How many others had trusted the rangers, only to vanish into the depths of Pine Hollow? "Lucas!" The name tore from her throat again, raw and frantic. The night air slithered cold against her skin, amplifying her fear. The flickering campfire cast dancing shadows that seemed to taunt her, twisting into grotesque figures behind the trees. Panic twisted in her stomach as she spun around, desperately widening her search radius. Where had she lost him? The fearful whispers of the locals gripped her thoughts, their words like poison worms, burrowing deeper into her mind. Never trust the rangers, they only lead you away. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, and she fished it out, illuminating the darkening woods. The screen showed a picture of Lucas, his innocent smile freezing her with regret. "You wanted to be brave for him," she muttered bitterly to herself, heart racing, "and now he's gone." "Lucas!" she shouted again, voice cracking. The weight of silence was suffocating, her breath shallow as the shadows laughed mockingly. In every rustle, her mind danced to the worst conclusions, each sound morphing into the ominous suggestion of her son in pain. Branches clicked together, and Sarah turned sharply toward the noise, her heart slamming to her throat. "Lucas!" Nothing, just the low hum of silence. She felt the dread build, thick as the damp air around her, wrapping tighter, squeezing her hope until it was unbearable. Were the rangers playing some sick game? Was it a trick to draw her deeper into the forest? Forcing herself to calm, Sarah took a breath. Somehow, she had to outsmart the shadows. She couldn't be paralyzed by fear. "Lucas!" But as she called, the darkness seemed to swallow her voice, mocking her desperate plea. She clenched her fists, struggling to keep panic at bay. A movement caught her eye beneath a dense thicket, a flicker of something pale. Her heart leapt into a mix of hope and dread. "Lucas!" She dashed toward the thicket, dashed. As she pushed through the thick brush, her phone slipped from her fingers, clattering to the ground. The screen illuminated a jagged rock that stuck up like a grave marker, casting jagged shadows across the ground. She bent down to search in the dim light, breath hitching as she felt the low thrumming pulse of dread resonating through her bones. That's when she saw it. Another child's shoe, unmistakably small and worn, almost crushed into the undergrowth. Her heart sank as a scream bubbled up, clawing at her throat. And then she heard it. A soft, faint rustling, too rhythmic to be wind. It came from behind her, crawling through the darkness. She spun around as she felt eyes on her, poised. The air was electric. "Where are you?" a voice whispered. Rusty, too slow for a child. It sent ice coursing through her veins. She was not alone. A figure emerged, cloaked in shadows, face obscured and eyes glinting like dark glass. Her breath caught as she backtracked, searching for an escape, but the shadows thickened like a wall around her, snuffing out the remaining light. "Lucas, run!" she screamed, but the fear dulled every sound she hoped to echo into the night. Instead, she felt herself being drawn toward the figure like a moth to a flame, gripping tighter to her sanity. The figure stepped closer, the shadows pulling back to reveal a ranger's insignia tattooed on its arm. A chilling smile widened across its face. "You shouldn't have come here. We keep things lost for a reason." Sarah spun back, heart racing, her eyes darting for any escape, but the woods felt impossibly alive. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of lost voices flooding her mind. "Mom!" Hope surged momentarily at Lucas's voice. So faint, so close. She didn't know if it was a trick or truth, but she had to find him. Disregarding everything else, she bolted toward the sound, deeper into the forest, ignoring the warning bell ringing in her mind. As she ran, the darkness surged around her, the trees seeming to shift, intentionally convoluting her path. But there was something else lurking behind the shadows, something that didn't want her to find her son. With every step, a chilling realization slipped into her mind. What if Lucas had already been lost? What if she was simply running into the heart of something far more sinister? And then, as she fought through branches and thorns, her foot caught on an unseen root. She tumbled forward, crashing to the ground, the wind knocked from her lungs. Dazed, she rolled to her back, heart racing. A pair of glowing eyes loomed above her. They weren't alone anymore. Before she could scream, Something heavy fell to her side, and everything went dark. Where was Lucas? All that remained was a chill in the air and the looming question, what happens when you find them, and they don't want to be found? The darkness swallowed Sarah whole, a suffocating blanket that hung heavy with unseen weight. Her heart pounded as she lay on the ground, barely breathing. She strained to listen, but had no idea what awaited her in the void. For a moment, fear wrestled with a paralyzing numbness. Then she heard whispers, faint and urgent, a soft symphony of desperation echoing all around her. "Sarah, Mom." The voice was childhood sweet, but trembled with the thread of something else, something deeper than mere fear. It felt stretched and weak, like a band ready to snap. "Lucas," she breathed, desperation drowning her. "Where are you?" The whispers grew louder, surrounding her like a storm gathering strength, weaving their eerie web around her senses. "Come find us. It's safe." She wanted to curl into herself, to erase every shadow around her, but the voice was a siren call, pulling her from the depths of panic. "Lucas!" she shouted, her voice stronger now, even as goosebumps chased across her skin. "Answer me!" A flicker of light broke through the gloom, illuminating a narrow path snaking ahead. Was it leading her to Lucas, or was it merely another trap? Heart racing, she pushed herself up, ignoring the pain coursing through her limbs as she stumbled toward the glimmer. Every step felt heavy, as if the ground itself disagreed with her purpose. Branches clawed at her, scratching against her skin, while shadows twisted and retreated just enough to let the small light hold her gaze. As she walked, the sound of rustling intensified, a crackle to her left, a thud behind her. She swung around, pulse racing. "Show yourself!" But only silence answered, and in that echoing void, the air thickened with the weight of something dark and knowing. "Mom! Lucas!" The sound wrapped around her desperation, a fierce resolve battling against the sinking dread that curled around her muscles. She stumbled forward, breathless, desperate for answers. The path opened into a wide clearing. The light flickered again, revealing a small circle of what looked like abandoned mega-tents, bent and stretched by time and horror. Flashes of memory stabbed at her. She had seen these tents, their colors vibrant yet twisted with neglect. This wasn't just any forest. It belonged to the camps that had gone missing over the years. A part of her knew the locals stayed away from this place, but she wasn't in the mood for caution. Not when Lucas could be nearby. "Lucas, where are you?" The ground trembled as laughter echoed through the clearing, a jarring cacophony that rang sharp against her eardrums. Figures emerged from the dark edges, their faces obscured, but their movements sinister, sliding in and out of shadows as if they were an unsettling part of the darkness itself. "Welcome!" a voice crooned, a slow, deliberate drawl. Each word dripped like honey but felt sharp as glass. "You've come to play." "Get away from my son!" she shouted as she stood her ground, whatever courage she had left surging within her. The figures circled, distorting her view, and she braced herself. He's lost like the others, trapped in the folds of this place. You can't save him. The laughter grew richer, like a feast of malice in the air. Despair crept in, a dense fog that threatened to envelop her. "You don't know what you're entering, do you?" The voice wrapped tight around her, each syllable punctuated by a rush of cold air. Somewhere in the distance, she thought she heard Lucas call again, but it was so far away now. This was the moment of truth. She could run, give in to terror, or stand and fight this terrifying darkness for her son. With a fierce shout, she lunged forward into the swirl of shadows, hands outstretched, desperate to grasp something, anything to pull herself and Lucas free. But the shadows grasped back, pulling her into their cold embrace. And then everything shifted, the laughter freezing in her throat. She could feel the ground fall away beneath her feet, darkness swallowing her as she hurtled toward something. "Where are you taking me?" she screamed, as the silence of the woods deepened, suffocating any hope left in her heart. What had she stumbled into? And who were these malevolent shadows? Now was the time for choices, but was choice simply an illusion crafted by those who hunted the lost? As she slipped between realities, a chilling thought pierced her mind. If she couldn't find Lucas fast, would she too become one of the Whispers, lost forever in the forest? The world spun around Sarah, the shadows gripping her tighter, pulling her into an abyss where sound lost meaning and light faded to a memory. Fear coiled in her gut like a serpent, squeezing tighter as she felt the ground give way beneath her. She was falling into the unknown. In her mind, Lucas's face flickered, a beacon of hope dimmed by the encroaching darkness. She fought to reach him, her hands clawing at the void, until something cool and damp caught her fingertips. Instinctively she gripped it, and with a sudden jolt, felt herself being thrust forward into a new realm. She landed hard on the ground, gasping as the air rushed back into her lungs. This place was different, an old campsite bathed in a sickly pale light. Grimy lanterns swung from splintered wooden posts, and the distant sound of water lapping at the shore pierced the suffocating silence. But everything felt wrong. The air was thick, suffused with an unsettling chill that seemed to vibrate with the echoes of lost souls. "Lucas!" she called out, voice trembling as dread settled over her like a heavy shroud. She pushed herself to her feet, debris crunching beneath her as she blinked away the frigid haze. A cry, not her son's, but a terrible warble of laughter, guttural and childlike, broke through the air. It bounced through the eerie shadows, twisting her stomach while her instincts screamed danger. She turned, panic rushing back. "Show yourself!" she shouted, but only her own voice echoed in response. The path she stumbled along was littered with remnants of a forgotten existence. A cracked mirror lay half buried in the dirt, reflecting a nightmarish version of herself. Was that blood on her hands? She wiped frantically at her skin, but the stains only multiplied, black and vile, a reflection of the terror wrapping around her heart. Then the laughter returned, a cruel cacophony, rising and falling like the tide. It came from all directions, but she couldn't see who or what was making the sound. Just as her resolve began to crumble, a flicker of movement caught her eye by the edge of the water. "Lucas!" she whispered, rushing toward the shimmering surface. A figure crouched there, back turned to her. Hope surged within her chest. "Lucas, is that you?" As she was about to reach out, the figure turned, and icy dread settled in like a heavy stone. It wasn't Lucas. The child was wearing tattered clothes, mud splashed across a visage that twisted into a hideous grin. Its eyes were empty sockets, two voids of darkness that swallowed the little light around them. "Found you!" it hissed, the laughter now twisted into a predatory keen, echoing around her like the approach of a pack. Panicked, Sarah stumbled back, feet tangling in the underbrush. "You're not real!" she screamed. But the words felt hollow against the encroaching darkness. The laughter swelled, filling her ears with a sound so alien it felt as if the forest itself was alive and hungry. The child pointed, motioning to the still water. "They all come back, you know." Eventually, panic surged again, and in a burst of adrenaline she turned and ran, heart pounding like a drum. The shadows flickered around her, urging her to stop, to turn back, but the thought of being caught, of joining the ranks of the lost, pushed her forward. "Run away, Sarah. You can't save him," a voice cooed softly from the darkness, weaving into her mind like smoke. Desperation clawed at her throat as she ran faster, breath ragged, the laughter receding, but its echoes following close behind. Would she ever see Lucas again, or was she too trapped in this wicked web of shadows? Suddenly, the ground gave way beneath her again, and she fell into another darkness, deeper this time. "What is this place?" she cried out to the oblivion, knowing she may never get a response. For a moment, everything fell silent. No laughter, no whispers, just the weight of cold, oppressive darkness pressing in. Then, a familiar distant cry emerged from the void, a fear-laden plea that made her heart leap. "Sarah!" It was Lucas. Clenching her fists, she threw herself deeper into the abyss, each conviction to find him slicing through the darkness like a beacon. But what other horrors awaited her below? The ground beneath trembled as she fell, and she knew she was no longer alone. The fall felt endless, a suffocating descent into nothingness. Sarah's body braced for impact as she hit the ground hard. The shock reverberated up her spine, but she forced herself to stand. Darkness surrounded her, an enveloping shroud that clung to her skin like wet clay. "Lucas!" she cried, but the echo returned to her without a trace of his voice. Panic surged through her, greater than ever. She turned in a slow circle, feeling the crushing weight of despair. Trees towered around her, gnarled and twisted like skeletal hands, reaching toward a sky that felt unforgivingly low. Then came the laughter again, sinister and sharp, slicing through the air like a knife. It whispered through the trees, drowning her in fear. There was no mistaking its mocking tone. It was taunting her, feeding on her desperation. Not far now. A voice flickered from the darkness, an almost cheerful melody that made her skin crawl. "They're all waiting for you." The ground became uneven beneath her, roots snaking out like fingers, grasping for her ankles as she stumbled forward. Shadows flitted past at the corners of her vision, flickers of movement that made her skin prickle with terror. She felt watched, like prey in a predator's gaze. Whatever lurked among those trees was hungry. Taking slow, deliberate steps, she moved cautiously, heart racing in her chest. Each step felt like stepping on glass, prickling and painful. Her breath hung in the air, palpable and cold. The darkness seemed to want to swallow her whole. "Why are you trying so hard?" the voice asked, draping itself around her like silk. "You know he isn't here. He doesn't want to be found." "No." Sarah's voice came out sharp and desperate. "He's out there. I will find him." The laughter of the unseen crowd grew, writhing with delight, as if they were circling her, a pack of wolves ready to close in. They were encouraging her, feeding her fury, pushing her deeper into their nightmarish domain. "Listen closely," the voice continued, now closer, almost inside her head. "They roam these woods, a family all lost like you. It's a cozy little gathering. You'd fit right in." The words echoed, stirring something inside her that seemed to resonate with the shadows, fear and guilt intertwined. Then she saw them, a flicker of movement, shifting between the trees. Wraith-like figures hovered, distorted faces watching her with a longing Sarah couldn't bear. They echoed Lucas's laughter, contorting into mocking mirth. "Your son is here, Sarah, just beyond your reach," the voice snarled, vibrating with malice. "No," she screamed, the primal rage erupting within her. She ran, pushing through the tangled underbrush, desperate to escape that taunting chorus. But every tree's shadow loomed larger, the path darker and treacherous. It felt like they were drawing her closer to a trap she could not see. Through the dense fog, she spotted a flicker of light, pale and beckoning like a lighthouse. It pulsed rhythmically, drawing her toward it. Was it salvation or yet another deception? But she felt that haunting pull of hope. "Lucas!" she called out, a wild spark igniting in her heart. Dash after dash, she pushed forward, only to be met by darkness thickening ahead, almost as if it were alive, shifting and alive to protect its secret, what lay beyond the shadows. As she reached the edge of the clearing, a chilling sound stopped her in her tracks. A soft weeping floated through the air, wrapping around her like a cold embrace. "Mama! Help!" It was unmistakably Lucas. "No!" she yelled, but the sobs grew louder, more desperate. The shadows parted just ahead, drawing her gaze to a small figure trapped in a web of vines, eyes wide and terrified. "Sarah." Its voice was breaking, fading. Before she could move, the shadows surged around her, and the sinister laughter returned, a crescendo of horrifying delight, echoing her worst fears. "You're too late. He's already part of us." Sarah's heart fell as realization hit her. The figures, the families, had not survived. They had been consumed by the forest, by whatever evil held dominion here. And then she recognized that face in the dark, twisted shapes. The child she'd thought was Lucas was just another poor lost soul. In that moment, the light flickered and vanished. The anguished cries of multiple children rang through the trees, blending into a nightmarish symphony. Panicking, she twisted around as she heard heavy footsteps thudding behind her, drowning out the cries. Whatever hunted her was coming fast. "Come home, Sarah," the voice hissed, slithering closer as the shadows moved. Just as all hope seemed lost, she spied a path, twisting dark and inviting. It promised escape, but at a steep cost. Would she dare take it? With just another heartbeat, she charged for it, ready to race into the unknown, hoping it was the path to find Lucas, or heading to her end. What waited ahead could not be imagined. The darkness around Sarah intensified. Shadows danced and blurred her vision. Each step felt like a stray step deeper into a pit with no end. The whispers sank back into her mind, a relentless buzz, stirring fear into a frenzy. What she had hoped would be the path to her son felt more like a snare closing in. "Lucas," she cried, but her voice trembled, losing its strength to the oppressive gloom. An eerie silence enveloped her, only the rustling branches surrounded her. Musty air filled her lungs as the trees conspired, inching closer, their gnarled fingers reaching for her. Her heart pounded louder. It became her only companion, thumping against her ribs like a frantic drum. The light ahead flickered erratically. It was a beacon, but of what? Would it reveal her salvation, or something far more sinister? Then she heard a soft thud, the unmistakable sound of footsteps behind her. Panic surged anew. Whipping around, she only caught a glimpse, an indistinct form gliding just beyond the reach of the dim light. The air felt thick, the kind that stirs unease. Her instinct screamed for her to run, yet she stood frozen, paralyzed by a macabre curiosity. "Run," the cold wind seemed to say, "or remain and suffer." With every nerve alive, she turned back toward the flickering light. She raced forward, heart hammering in her chest, pushing through the encroaching darkness. Something shifted just beyond her peripheral vision. A shape. She flinched, ready to bolt, but a fateful glimpse stopped her. A child's face, twisted and gaunt, peered from behind a tree, hollow eyes drilling into her soul. "Help me," it croaked, voice heavy with anguish. "Please, no." Sarah gasped, tearing her gaze away. The forest was alive with the lost, their hollow pleas echoing all around her. She couldn't stay. She had to find Lucas. Each step was an act of defiance against the forest's will to snare her in despair. But the laughter returned, mocking her effort. The figures materialized from the shadows, horrid visages that twisted into grotesque smiles. "They all belong to us," the voice cooed sweetly, wrapping around her like a serpent. "You've come to join the family." "No!" she yelled, desperation flooding her voice. "I want my son!" The shadows seemed to writhe at her words, their laughter rising in volume as if they were surrounded by an audience. "He cannot hear you, Sarah," the voice declared, chillingly triumphant. "He's gone, lost, like the others." Sarah felt the world tilt beneath her. Her breath quickened. Sharp pain lanced through her chest. This couldn't be it. She couldn't lose Lucas. She wouldn't allow it. With renewed fury, she broke into a sprint, chasing the light as it pulsed invitingly before her. But what awaited her was not what she had hoped. The light led her to a clearing, a purgatorial space where reality warped and twisted. A crude altar stood at the center, the air thick with an acrid scent of decay. "Will you yield?" the voice beckoned, wrapping around her throat. "Join us and let the darkness embrace you." And suddenly, the ground spread in front of her, revealing an opening, a gaping maw leading down into the bowels of hell itself. Shadows spilled from its depths, hungry and eager. The unsettling laughter rose to a fevered pitch as tendrils shot forth, wrapping around her ankles, pulling her toward the abyss. "Lucas!" she screamed, feeling the darkness claw at her mind, trying to smother her hope. Just as everything began to slip away, she spotted movement, small and desperate. The flicker of the child's face peeked from the dark. "Mama, please!" Sarah lunged forward, wild determination surging. The shadows fought back, dragging her down, but she wouldn't let it take her. It was now or never. She clawed at the earth, ripping herself free from the grasping tendrils, just enough to reach the glimmer of hope. "Help me pull him out!" But the shadows swarmed, drawing closer with every second. The chilling laughter morphed into a cacophony of taunts, creating a horrific symphony that threatened to drown her spirit. Will she escape with Lucas, or will she succumb to the sinister forces that crave her despair? The answer loomed just out of reach. Sarah felt the frantic tug of despair grip her as the shadows surged closer, thick and relentless. Each tendril that reached for her turned her stomach into a knot. They whispered promises while they hardened around her ankles, an insidious embrace that threatened to pull her down. "Pull him out! I won't let him go!" she screamed, an adrenaline-fueled roar. She glanced back at the gaping void where the child's face flickered again, a grim reflection of hope in a landscape of horror. "Just reach for me, please, Mama!" The voice pierced her, raw and urgent. She couldn't falter now. Sarah focused, drawing strength from the primal urge to protect her son. She tugged and wrested her foot free from the shadowy grasping arms. With a primal scream, she lunged forward, arms outstretched, ready to reclaim the last remnant of her failing sanity and heart. The moment her fingers brushed against the cold skin of the boy, a surge of electricity jolted through her. She felt the warmth of life, yet it was fleeting, like a candle threatened by an encroaching storm. The shadows shrieked, a cacophony of rage swirling around her, clawing and tearing, each jest of inevitability echoing its dark promise. "No, you can't have him!" she cried out, wrenching Lucas closer, desperately trying to break free of the grasping dark. A fierce jolt of fear shot through her, and a wave of shadows crashed into her, throwing her back to the ground. Grasping hands broke her focus. A few strands of hair fell across her eyes as she struggled to regain some semblance of clarity. She could feel the ground beneath tremble, reacting to the shadow's insatiable hunger. The world warped again, twisting into scenes of other lost souls, a woman howling in despair, a man scraping at the earth, their frantic efforts forgotten, consumed by the malice of the forest. Then there was silence. The taunting laughter faded, leaving behind an eerie calm that enveloped her like a shroud. Lucy's face twisted into a pained grimace, disappearing into the darkness. Heart racing, Sarah forced herself up, eyes scanning the gathering night. "Mom!" His voice echoed, laced with urgency. No, it was a trap, one she couldn't fall for again. She turned, running blindly through the thickening shadows, spine tingling with every rustle and crackle around her. The whispers returned now, weaving stories of hopelessness, lost mothers and children, driven mad by despair. "Join them, Sarah. You know you're next," they cooed, a chilling reminder of what lurked beneath the soil, gnawing on her resolve. "No!" She shook her head violently, banishing the thoughts. Lucas was lost, but she was not finished yet. She surged forward, rage coiling in her stomach. The trees peeled back for a moment, revealing a path. The light seemed to pulse again, brighter than before. But as she took a step, she felt it all shift. Roots burst from the ground, writhing like serpents, ensnaring her legs in a vice-like grip. A whisper brushed against her ear. "Stop fighting, dear. You'll be home soon." Panic rose like bile. She could see it then, faces swirling in the darkness, mouths moving soundlessly, a legion of the forgotten beckoning her to join them. The child's face flared again, despair etched in features that were so painfully familiar. "Mama! Help me!" Fueled by desperation, Sarah threw herself forward, her hands clawing at the earth, the cold soil slipping beneath her fingers as she collapsed at the threshold of the light. But just before she crossed, a sharp tug pulled her back. She turned, eyes wide as she faced the encroaching shadows, ready to consume her whole. And then a whispering truth struck her. "The price is heavy, and you've brought the burden." The shadows lunged, and in that moment she understood. Whatever she chose to save, something precious would pay the ultimate price. Would it be her soul, ripped from her at its core? "Lucas!" she wailed, knowing she had to make a decision. Swirling darkness pressed against her, filled with cries of the tormented, a choice that felt more like doom. Could she save them both? Was there even a chance? Just ahead, a ripple of light beckoned. But the shadows were waiting, eager to squeeze her dry. The question loomed again, churning in her mind. What was she willing to sacrifice to escape? As desperation consumed her, she glanced back one last time at the fading visage of her son. Could she make it back to him, or would the darkness claim another life? The truth pushed against her chest, suffocating in its terror. The shadows paused, as if waiting for her next move. Breathless, Sarah's heart thundered in her chest, a wild rabbit in the snare of fate. The air was thick, tangling in her throat, stifling her cries for help. The weight of 100 souls bore down on her, each a whisper of desperation threading itself into her being. Suddenly, the ground beneath her started to tremble, and the heartbeat of the forest resonated like a tribal drum. She could hear the mournful cries of those who had come before her, echoes twisting through the darkness. The shadows advanced, inching ever closer, their viscid forms writhing in anticipation. "Join us, Sarah," a voice called out, its tone rich with temptation and despair. The voices of the lost grew louder, merging into a crescendo, an unstoppable tide threatening to wash over her very sanity. Her mind raced. She couldn't let them pull her under. She had to think. "Lucas." At the sound of his name, a surge of rage burned through her. "Get away from him!" she cried, eyes blazing as she pushed herself up, forcing against the grip of the roots wrapping around her. With each shout, she felt a little of the darkness retreat. Perhaps shouting would help. Perhaps she was stronger than all of this. The ground shifted, cracking beneath her weight as she struggled. The roots recoiled slightly, unnerved by her defiance. With renewed determination, Sarah scrambled forward, reaching for the glimmer of light. It flickered like a restless flame, barely holding on against the encroaching shadows. If she could just reach it. But at that moment the darkness roared, a sound like thunder, loud and all-consuming. It knotted her stomach with fear. It was a warning, a promise of what awaited her should she fail. A shadow flung itself forward, forming a figure of warped memories. It settled into the likeness of her husband, his eyes hollow, pleading. "Sarah, you mustn't go back. It's not safe." His voice was a chilling echo, clipped, distorted. "You don't understand. You can't save them. They never come back." "Stop it!" she cried, raking her hands through tangled roots, taking in the sight of the ghostly apparition. "Stop trying to trick me!" But the despair washed over her again, those words hammering in her head. Was it true? Would Lucas never come back? "Join me, Sarah. We can be together." The hollow eyes beckoned softly, promising her a peace she so desperately craved. A moment of bliss in the dark horrors swirling around her. "Never!" she shouted defiantly. A surge of hot adrenaline coursed through her veins as she launched herself at the light, pushing aside fleeting shadows that clawed at her. For a heartbeat, she glided on the edge of hope. Then, as if the darkness were alive, the ground erupted beneath her. A freezing gust, the forest exhaled, and tendrils of shadow snatched at her from all directions. "You will pay, Sarah. This is who you are now," the chorus of voices hissed, drowning out her own. Frantically reaching ahead, she grasped for something, anything. Fingers brushed against the light, a kaleidoscope of warmth, but the shadows closed in faster, teeth of darkness snapping inches from her face. In that instant, she realized something horrifying. The cost had been laid bare. The promise of safety came with unimaginable sacrifice. The thundering heartbeat of her fears echoed as she grappled with the truth. The choice loomed colossal before her. With one hand grasping the light, she could escape. But to claim it, something deeper within her, something she couldn't afford to lose, would have to be given. "Lucas!" she roared one last time, barely holding herself together. The darkness grinned. It was ready, and just as she stepped toward the light, a final whisper slithered into her ear. "You cannot escape the darkness, Sarah. You are mine now." With the light flickering and shadows lapping at her ankles, Sarah's resolve shattered. What kind of a mother was she? Would she abandon her child? Suddenly around her, memories flooded back, moments spent with Lucas, his laughter, his safety. Desperate and wild, she hurled herself away from the light and toward the shadows. "Take me! I won't let him go!" As the darkness enveloped her, a scream erupted from somewhere deep within. But in that smothering blackness, she felt chains tighten around her heart, an anchor pulling her down, closer toward the void. What awaited her in this decision? The answers clawed at her mind even as they slipped away, lost in the consuming dark. Would she ever escape the price of her choices? The shadows encased Sarah, an embrace of desperation and dread. It felt like drowning, the weight of her choice pressing down, squeezing the breath from her lungs. Around her, the darkness pulsed, sending faint echoes of despair from its depths. She could no longer tell if the whispers came from the tortured souls trapped within or her own frayed mind. She stumbled through the heavy gloom, her fingers brushing against something slick and cold, the surface of forgotten memories clamoring for her attention. Shapes flitted at the edges of her vision, twisted faces caught in torment. Voices wrapped around her, threading together in a haunting symphony. "Join us! Free yourself!" But Sarah's spirit flared. She could feel the pull of the shadows, anchoring her down with thorns of hopelessness. Panic surged like icy water. She had to escape. "Lucas needs me!" she called out, the words echoing back mockingly, swallowed by the ravenous blackness. Gripping a distant memory of warmth, she pressed on, her feet moving through the indistinguishable ground. A sudden chill lanced through her, freezing her in place. She gasped, stifling the laughter in her throat, a hollow sound that wasn't her own, whispering sweet lies. One shadow detached itself from the mass, transforming into a familiar figure. It was Lucas, but not entirely. The face twisted, his features melted into a nightmarish parody. "You shouldn't have come back, Sarah. You've awakened them." His voice was thick with a sinister suggestion, each word sticky with malice. "No," she screamed, "you're not him!" Defiance surged within her. But with every breath, the weight around her heart grew heavier. She remembered those moments, the arguments, the warmth of their shared laughter, the love they had built, despite the madness surrounding them. Would she trade it all for a false promise? The figures grew closer, whispering harder, urging her deeper into the abyss. "Forget him. Come to us." The shadows slithered across her skin, their touch like ice, clawing for her to submit. Desperation clawed at her, and she fell to her knees, feeling the ground shift ominously beneath her. Panic flared as she forced herself to think. What if she could use this against them? "You want me to join you?" she bellowed, her voice scarcely more than a rasp against the pressing silence. "Take me then, take me to what you fear." The shadows shrieked, a cacophony of rage that reverberated through the hollow depths. In that moment, Sarah felt a shift. The ground shuddered violently, the darkness wailing as though tormented. For an instant, she felt a flicker of power stream through her, a connection with the anguished souls around her, their despair igniting a pulsing defiance within. But as quickly as it came, the darkness retaliated. A storm of shadowy tendrils raged around her, lashing out in fury. "You will regret this," they hissed, a cold whisper rasping against her skin. Fighting against the surge, she staggered back, breaking their hold momentarily. But she could feel the shadows circling like wolves, waiting for her next misstep. "I won't regret anything," she screamed, her heart pounding in her ears as her resolve hardened. She had to break free. She had to save Lucas. In the distance, the flickering light pulsed like a heartbeat, calling her once again. Could it truly be the salvation she sought, or another trap laid in the fog? Struggling to make a decision, Sarah cast one last desperate glance at the distorted figure of Lucas, hovering just beyond her reach. The darkness writhed, clawing at her heart. "Find your way back," he urged, his hollow eyes briefly sparking with flickers of the love they had, before the shadows pulled him back, merging him once more into the void. With a renewed fervor, she pressed toward the light. The shadows screeched, lunging at her heels. "You can't escape us!" they shrieked, but determination fueled her now. And just as hope flickered, a searing pain gripped her soul, erasing every last semblance of certainty. A horrifying realization settled in. She had chosen to fight the darkness, but at what cost? Terror pushed her to sprint, magic surging through her veins. Would the light accept her brokenness, or would she become one with the very shadows she sought to defy? As she neared, a dissonant harmony erupted, planets colliding within the void, and whispers of a greater evil stalked deeper inside. What further trials awaited, waiting in the relentless dark? A blinding light enveloped Sarah as she crossed the threshold, the warmth flooding her senses like a sweet balm. The shadows recoiled, hissing in fury, while the echoes of lost souls diminished into strained wails. For a moment, everything felt still, as if the forest itself held its breath, waiting for what would come next. But as clarity returned, the world materialized in shades of grey and memory. She found herself sprawled on a grassy patch, surrounded by the comforting scent of wildflowers and the distant sound of children's laughter. Disoriented, she pulled at strands of discomforting familiarity. This was her childhood playground, her past woven into fragrant summer days. Where was Lucas? "Lucas!" she gasped, panic swelling as the memories of torment flickered in her mind like films of a horror show. Was this a ruse? Was the darkness cloaked in nostalgia? The shadows could disguise themselves as anything. They thrived on her fears. "Mom! Mommy!" came a feeble reply. The tiny voice drew her closer as she stumbled across the field. Each step felt like a weight lifting, but the shadows loomed at the edges of her awareness, ready to overwhelm her again. She had to focus. "Lucas!" she cried out, battling the growing shadows surrounding her, thrumming with malevolent energy. "I'm coming!" As she turbulent trod forward, the voice led her further, guiding her to an old, weather-beaten tree at the far edge of the playground, its trunk knotted and twisted. Silhouettes danced around it, shadows whispering, tantalizing. "Mom, help me!" A sense of urgency flicked through her being. That was her son, and he needed her. Rushing closer, she grasped the trunk for support, fingers digging into the rough bark. Panic surged again as she peered around the base. Lucas was there, tangled in vines that clung like grasping hands. He looked frightened, his wide eyes glistening with tears, but her heart soared at the sight of him alive. "Lucas! I'm scared!" he whimpered, and that sound of fear shattered Sarah's resolve. The darkness coiled like a serpent around her ankles, tugging with relentless insistence, trying to ground her fear. But she couldn't falter, not now. "No, hold on, sweetie," she shouted, lunging for him. The shadows surged, their howls merging into a frenzy. The tendrils whipped at her, wrapping around her wrists and ankles, trying to pull her away. "You can't save him," they hissed, their voices insidious. But determination ignited a fire in her chest. "I won't let you take him." With newfound strength, she clawed at the shadows, the vines wrapping tighter around Lucas. "Let him go!" With every squeeze, Lucas cried out, tears streaming down his cheeks. She couldn't lose him, not again. "Stay strong, sweetie, I'm right here." Breath coming in ragged gasps, Sarah twisted, grasping the invisible thread connecting her heart to his. With a primal scream that echoed through the park, she erupted forward, yanking Lucas from the clutches of the vines. "Mom!" he sobbed, as she pulled him tight against her, the radiant light bursting forth like sunrise shattering a dark, long night. The shadows shrieked, the brightness overwhelming them like a tide of purity, washing over their despair. "Run! We have to run!" Sarah yelled as she felt the suffocating grip of despair loosen. Together they fled through the labyrinth of trees, the light pulsating behind them, a wall of safety. Shadows flared and lashed, but with each step they were driven back. "Lucas, keep holding on!" Sarah's heart swelled with resolve, anchored in the warmth of her son's presence. Laughter erupted faintly among the shadows as they chased, but their voices grew weaker, drowning in the overpowering light that surged behind them. Farther out they rushed, branches snapping and falling away, until finally the trees parted like curtains revealing the open field once more. The sun greeted them warmly, rays flooding their bodies, feeding hope back into their souls. "Mom!" he gasped, relief sweeping over his face. "We did it!" Yes, we did," she breathed, wrapping her arms tighter around him as they both fell to the ground. But in the midst of their embrace, lingering remnants of darkness clung to the edges of her mind. The whispers faded, but shadows danced at the corners of her vision, reminding her of the sinister forces buried within the forest. This wasn't over. The rangers would still watch, the woods would always know, but in that precious moment, as Lucas buried his face into her side, the darkness felt less threatening. They had faced the worst together. They had won. "Let's go home," Sarah murmured, brushing Lucas's tangled hair away from his forehead. He smiled, the innocence of childhood brightening the dull ache left behind by fear. But as they stood, a tremor rippled through the ground, as if the forest still ached for them, longing to reclaim what it lost. Sarah hesitated, heart racing. "Mom!" Lucas tugged at her hand, sensing the shift in her focus. "Let's run!" they both shouted, newfound determination echoing through the midnight dark. Together they took off, hearts pounding but freedom glowing as their beacon, all the way home. And somewhere in the depths, the shadows sighed in resignation as the rangers emerged to watch them leave, fading into the horizon. Darkness receded for now, but they had tasted it, and it would lurk, whispering from the edges of their minds. If you enjoyed this thrilling journey with Sarah and Lucas, you need to subscribe now so you don't miss out on the next incredible adventure we'll share. Smash that like button now, and help us feed the algorithm, show your support for the stories, and remember to flood that comment section with your reactions and theories about the ending. What do you think will happen next to our heroes? Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support means everything.